There it goes. There's my mic. Okay, so we're going to be doing a deep dive into this topic that I covered this week, since this has been making the rounds. So I want to start off by giving a sort of pretext, a philosophical pretext, of kind of where I'm coming from. Okay. So I present my sort of Weltanschauung or worldview and how I'm going to look at this and the lens I'm going to be using. So, for example, I'm radical objectivist, anarcho-capitalist, and agorist. So we're going to look at this from the radical objectivist, mostly Rand influence. And we're going to talk about this guy Henry here, this poor fellow who was stabbed to death and allowed to die by the state. So as you know, as an individual, he was a young, ambitious sort of finance student, I think. He had his own life and his whole potential and rights and everything. And sort of, this is like contrast to the altruist and collectivist mindset that you often excuses or downplays. And they did downplay the violence through group identities. Like, for example, like racism claims or multiculturalism policies. Or in this case, it was a two-tiered policing where the state pretty much prioritizes the narrative over the facts and individual life. So, for example, Rand, she stressed reason, individual rights, and the evil of initiating force. And this is what they initiated force here, was evil. And here, for example, this stabbing was pure initiation of force. And the police response was, handcuffing a dying man while believing he was the perpetrator because the real perpetrator said he was racist. It just shows you how the bureaucracy and the fear of racism accusations corrupt object reality and justice. Okay, so now from an Ancap, an anarcho-capitalist perspective, and as far as like property rights and self-defense and voluntary society versus, in this case, a monopoly government, the state here, under this Ancap pretext here, it completely failed at its core. It claimed function, supposedly, protecting life. It didn't protect or serve life. So the police arrived, misjudged based on the killer's lie. The Henry was a racist. Cuffed the victim as he bled out, saying, and he said 9 times, right? You've probably seen the video by now. I can't breathe. And he says, "Help, I've been stabbed." So no effective immediate aid by the police. Now, according in my ANCAP framework here, this highlights why monopoly policing just creates perverse incentives. Like, for example, liability fears and political correctness over evidence, that kind of stuff. Private security, reputation markets, and arming individuals. In this case, they de-armed the individuals in the UK. Only certain individuals can have a knife. Nowak filming the altercation. He shows the awareness, but no defensive tools. He had no knife to protect himself, or mace for that matter. Would likely perform better. Okay, so the knife carried by the perpetrator, ceremonial knot, is they're disarmed. The UK citizens are disarmed. Yeah. So now from an agorist point of view here, as counter economics and gray black markets, you think, what does it have to do with building parallel systems outside the state? We use this critique here as how the state's war on knives and guns control and welfare and multicultural policies create underclasses and protected classes, and this in turn breeds violence while honest people suffer. In this case, Henry was an honest person. Agorists focused on entrepreneurship and voluntary exchange over politics, so we sort of frame the stream as rejecting state solutions. Yeah, and that's what I'm driving at here. we need to hire our own private securities. If Henry had a private security firm do this, this would never happen. And more laws like this don't work. Okay, these kind of state solutions, however, in favor of cultural and moral shifts toward personal responsibility We need more private defense, withdrawing consent from the failing institutions. So there's the article we're looking at here, and then we're going to look at some of the video footage and timestamps and analyze that. Okay. The thing I'm going to have to worry about here is the risks and the cautions of showing this. You know, platforms like YouTube and Twitch, they really do heavily moderate sensitive topics, especially involving race, immigration, anything police criticism. So we're going to stick to the facts. Grounded in the principles, non-aggression principle, individualism, epistemology, that kind of stuff. Okay, so we're going to look at, our focus will be just the facts of the case here and what we know so far up to this point. You know, what's happened, the timeline, and then the failures of state monopoly justice and this two-tier application. And of course, at the root of this is the complete denial of objective reality. Don't believe your lying eyes. So, philosophical breakdown is here. Definitely individual rights have been violated. The primacy of forced initiation, in this case, altruism, collectivism, enabling it. And the Ancap Agorist solutions here. We want the free society would be differently. No private insurance, private arbitration. Reputation, arming the productive. Okay. So let me go ahead and start with the script here that I have written so far. I had to update this since June 1st because a lot has happened since the Bodycam footage has been released. Hampshire Police apology, IOPC investigation, you know, family statements, protests with the violence, 11 officers injured. Oh, whoa, whoopee-doo. Further charges against the Digwa family. Yeah, this family is despicable. Calls for reviews, inquest ordered, and political fallout. Hopefully this will strengthen my philosophical points. State failure. So welcome. Finally, I gave you the philosophical pretext, my worldview to this, and welcome to the stream finally. And we watched, you know, people watched, anybody that watched the video, if you could stomach watching it, because there's more footage out there that hasn't been released. That's even more horrific. But a lot of people that did watch, they watched the 18-year-old boy, Henry. His killer was sentenced. But the outrage though exploded when the body cam footage, you know, showing Henry handcuffed and dying while police dismissed his pleas. Right, that's, my goodness. This following week we had a lot of protests turned violent, of course. There were some police apologies, but who cares? You know, so I'm just doing my training, I'm just doing my job, standard fare, status fare. Political, you know, the political firestorms, and there's even more charges against the killer's family since we've done this. So through all this lens, again, we're gonna dissect how bad this epistemology, altruism, and collectivism and state monopoly, sacrificing an individual life to the false narrative. This is the big tragedy. Okay, I don't know how long the stream's gonna be, but let's see. So the first part here, the objective facts, what actually happened. So as always, the primacy of existence first. So this week did bring a lot of fresh details, like I said, and confirmation. Henry, he was 18 years old from Essex. He was a first-year finance student, was walking home unarmed after a night out. He had a little drinky poo. But Victor Digma, 23, stabbed him 5 times with a 21 centimeter inch kirpan on Belmont Road. So here's the body cam footage from about 17. Is that the whole stuff? See, we don't have the whole thing. Look at this, 2 minutes and 20 seconds. What if we're gonna look at this one? This is from 17 minutes. We'll start from 17 minutes here. Let's see. Yeah, right around there is good. Hope this sounds okay. Okay, so I made the screen bigger. So here we hear him He keeps dropping side to side, so I'm trying to keep him to stand up. But I think here at the 17-second mark, Henry's going to say, I've been stabbed. He's got a mouthful of blood, so they know this. They know he's been stabbed. But what is it? See, I can't breathe. Oh, he's got a here's the murderer right here. He's got a little swollen eye. And look at him. He's not cuffed. The murderer is not cuffed. You've seen this. I mean, God, this is horrible. Oh, your eye is swollen. Meanwhile, you stabbed a guy several times, but your eye is swollen. Remember, this guy's the real victim, according to them. I can't breathe. And they handcuff him. I've been stabbed?
You've been stabbed? Whereabouts? Don't think you have, mate.
Yeah, we've heard that, but isn't that just infuriating? Don't think you have, mate. Wow. Yeah, that's what it said. Yeah, I've been stabbed. And then you've been stabbed. Whereabouts, officer? Don't think you have, mate. Even though he just recognized there was blood coming out of his mouth. Now from here, he says 9 times, I can't breathe. And he's going to plead for the ambulance. All ignored. All ignored while he was being handcuffed. This is worse than George Floyd. I never actually seen this whole footage, so this is the first time for me. He said it. He's got a mouthful of blood, and then they mute the audio. What, to cover up what the cop said after that? Look, muted. About the footage, repeatedly says, I can't breathe. But yet, remember the perpetrator, the guy stabbed him, he's still uncuffed. He's just sitting around with little swollen eye. Yeah, I wonder why they muted the audio. He hasn't been stabbed, even though he recognized that there was blood in his mouth. Unbelievable. We have to check, don't we? The guy says no. Meanwhile, the perpetrator is still uncuffed. Holy shit, that's really bad. My goodness. Let's see. Did they got the subtitles here for this one? Yeah, we saw that already, yeah. Do they have it where he says, I can't breathe? Yeah. There he is. Yeah, 9 times he said, I can't breathe. Jesus Christ. Yeah, and you still want sort of a night watchman? You still want a government? You think government will protect and serve your life? They don't. They don't serve you. They serve the state's religion. So at this week, I think June, finally they sentenced the guy, Digwa, June 1st to life with 21-year minimum. Well, he should just get executed. Judge William here, Mosley, whatever, Casey, said he brought shame on his family, community, and religion, and confirmed Henry said nothing racist. Digwa's mother convicted of assisting offender. Yeah. The sentencing was July 17th. Will be July 17th. And there'll be further charges filed against Digwa's father and brother for weapon offenses. Weapons offenses. And the guy was still uncuffed. He claimed a little swollen eye. God. Hampshire police constable, he apologized directly to the family. Well, it's just empty apology. IOPC investigating, supposedly. So there's a full inquest into Henry's death, examining police role. It has been ordered for September 2027. You know, if that was the Floyd thing, they would have expedited. They would have gone much faster with this. so they can have their little riots in 2020 and 2021. There were protests that did erupt in Southampton and elsewhere with the clashes of 11 injured officers. Who cares about them? I don't care if they get injured. I can care less. So these are the facts here. Some up here. Blood, wounds, and it was ignored by a dying declaration. Yeah, the guy kept refusing. No, remain undeniable despite the narrative spin. Yeah, we've heard the spin enough to make you sick. So now through radical objectivist analysis here, epistemology, we're going to get philosophical more. Ethics and individualism. Hold on. There you go. Okay. So yeah, the Bodycam figures, the Bodycam release, Fallout prove it, right? So reality is the primary. So we looked at what happened here. So at the 17 mark, I think it's this one. Is it this one? Yeah, I've been stabbed. There it is.
Body camera footage capturing Henry Nowak. Body camera footage. You've been stabbed? Whereabouts? Don't think you have, mate.
Yeah, I don't think you have, mate. He's not your mate. What a piece of garbage. So he says, I've been stabbed. Trying to officers dismiss it, then ignore I can't breathe 9 times. Let me see if we can get the other one. Do we have that one? Huh? Okay. I'm just trying to find that spot. We have to look at a commercial for a second here. So yeah, well, I want to see if they leave it in that he said 9 times. How about some Western countries? Let's see. The jump the fences, yeah. They pick him up even though he's bleeding. I've been stabbed. I know. He just said, I can't breathe. Grab his other arm. Jesus. What's happened to you? Jesus Christ. What a... They're going to cuff him. Oh, yeah, I know they removed the sound because they don't want you to hear his pleading of I can't breathe. So all the videos you've seen here have been censoring this. God, what absolute garbage. What absolute garbage this is. Here, what I'll do is I'll leave this on the screen while I narrate a little bit. So the reality is primary. So we saw the reality with our own eyes, right? So to go a little deeper here, the primacy of consciousness here in action. Officers trained in post-Macpherson fear chose the racist attack narrative over visible evidence, as you saw here. The state's apology and IOPC probe this week admit the failure, yet what? The initial response sacrificed Henry's final moments to optics. Inexcusable. Round up the RV police. Ethically, Digma's initiation of force what was evil. Yeah, the state compounded, made it worse. Henry was an individual, was kind, thoughtful, full. This guy was actually an upstanding, mostly upstanding. Yeah, was the upstanding citizen compared to Floyd. Floyd was worse. He was a despicable scum. He was a scoundrel. But this guy, Henry's the exact opposite of this. Keep that in mind, who they kneeled for. We know that. So he's full of purpose. He wasn't a pawn to tribal grievance or multiculturalism experiments here, right? So his family this week urged using his death for positive change, not division, which does align with rejecting altruism. No one should sacrifice their life or dignity for a collective harmony. Okay? No one. So the explosion of protests here and political reaction this week shows, people are sensing the denial of objective reality and individual rights. Okay. So updated here, Ancap Liz. I keep going with the philosophical here because not a lot of people are touching on that. So Ancap Liz here, the catastrophic failure of state monopoly on force. So an Ancap view here. So this monopoly government failed spectacularly, and this week's events prove it, right? Handcuffing a dying Henry while the killer stood free. You saw the killer clearly. He was not handcuffed. Followed by public outrage, violent protests, and emergency reviews. Nothing, yeah, sure. Okay, so what you can clearly see here, what you need is private security in a free market. And it would be judged by the results. So like agencies ignoring, I've been stabbed, I can't breathe, would collapse from lost reputation. Think PayPal Resolution Center. You already have private arbiters like this. So this week we did see calls for independent inspections into police training and response, right? So we got further weapons charges against Digman's family, and it shows that this highlights how the state's disarmament policies and the cultural exceptions create imbalance. Yep. You just pick and choose your victims and criminals, and you invert the criminal victim narrative, and it just shows more two-tiered policing, supposedly now under formal scrutiny, and this just shows a monopoly of force serving narratives over individual rights. But if you had polycentric law, that would deliver faster accountability. Polycentric law. Okay, so now we get into the agorist lens here, counter economics, the withdrawal, and a parallel society. This has all been updated. Okay, so agorism, the state creates chaos through policy. Then this week we see the fallout, the protests, the injuries, the political statements, and more charges that still won't fix the root causes. So what do? You withdraw consent. You build parallel systems, voluntary defense networks, community mutual aid without bureaucratic delays, reputation-based security. Yep. So the family's dignified call for change this week, right? Contrast this with the violence and exploitation. So this is exactly why you need counter-economic voluntarist alternatives instead of just relying on the failing state. And people are still relying on the failing state. Doesn't matter if you're from the red gang or the blue gang. How pathetic. The state is your enemy. Don't forget that. So now we get to the synthesis, not the Hegelian type, but we have practical solutions here, and we'll have the call to action here. So the synthesis, the bad epistemology, for example, dismissing Henry's pleas, altruism, collectivism, the narrative over individual, and monopoly failure, the apologies, and probes after the fact. So if anything, this week's events, sentencing, footage release, protests, and inquests, family statements make that crystal clear. So the practical steps, what can you do? Self-defense training, build voluntary communities of reason and individualism, support real accountability, and most importantly, withdraw consent, because you don't consent to the state, whatever state you live in or country you live, you don't consent to it. Honor Henry's by rejecting the ideas that enabled this. So rest in peace, Henry Nowak. Your family's dignity this week shows the strength. So let this fuel principled resistance to state failure and philosophy. So if you have any questions or comments about this, I think I covered about 30 minutes of this, and I think that's good enough. I show my philosophical base, where I'm coming from here, and what you could do about it, call to action. Because certainly voting is not going to work. Stop voting. All that does is just legitimize an illegitimate state. It just shows that you consent to the state, which you do not. No one consents to any state or any government. They're all illegitimate. and do not show your support for the government at all. So stop voting is one. That's one thing. And create your counter, like I said, counter economies and black and gray markets and such. We've covered that already. If you have any questions or if you want to add anything to this story, I think people have said a lot about it, and I wanted to give my sort of philosophical take on it for this week, and that pretty much covers what I wanted to talk about. Let's see if there's anything else. I think that's it. Okay. Yep. Okay. So, if you have any questions at all, drop me a line at my my X account. Let me put that in there. X. Let's see. Oh yeah. No, I don't want to do that. Yep. I'm gonna go home. So this is my X account. I'll put that in the chat box. Yeah, so you can follow me there. There you go. And if you have any questions or comments, or when you see more stories like this, let me know. Let me know in the comment box. And I hope you enjoyed today's stream. It's been about 30 minutes, I think. I think that's good enough on the topic. If you have anything else to add, please add more comments if you like. Okay, well, that's all for this week's sort of deep philosophical dive here into this topic. I hope you found it informative, and I hope you took my strategy and solutions seriously. So that way we'll never have to see this kind of tragedy ever again, but you probably will, because you always, no matter what kind of system you develop, there's always going to be irrational actors. And these irrational actors will be dealt with. They'll be punished. They'll have negative consequences, and you just not know what you can do about it. But this case, this is a state failure, and the police are at fault for all of this. No matter how much they plead, I was just following orders and just following the state training programs. These people are all guilty. Okay, I don't care if they made an oath to their fictitious constitution. They didn't make the oath to anything in reality, though. That's nothing to do in reality. Who are you making oath with? The wind? I made an oath to the Constitution, but who did you make an oath to, though, when doing that? Was it the ghost? Yeah, so I don't care. These police should be just rounded up. Yeah, taken care of. Okay. So with that, have a good weekend, and we'll see you tomorrow night for my weekly review of my videos. See what I improved on, what I got wrong, where my takes, were they pretty much right on, or are they wrong, and how my video production go. So I always like to do that once a week. So I'll see you then, and until then.